What have you always wanted to know about Boise State Public Radio? Join us for another round Wednesday, March 19th at Mad Swede Brew Hall in downtown Boise from 6 to 8 p.m. Learn more about our operations, news content, and our service mission. We welcome your questions and look forward to sharing more about what we do here at Boise State Public Radio. More details can be found on our website at boisestatepublicradio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. More Idaho Matters right now. After a couple of years of controversy, Disney's live-action remake of Snow White is coming to theaters this month. And if you caught the Oscars, you saw host Conan O'Brien take Adam Sandler to task for his casual attire. We are so happy to announce that our What to Watch segment is back with our resident movie critic and Morning Edition host, George Prentice. George, it has been way too long. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, Gemma, I am among friends again. So thank you so very much for the invite. I can't wait to share things with you. The one thing that I have been doing, as well as recuperating, is catching up on movies and TV.
Well, you know, it's a perfect time to do that. Okay, let's dive right. Let's dive right in because so much to get to, George. Give us a recap on how and where you can watch the Oscar winners, including two really high-profile winners that will begin streaming, next week?
Yeah, I think that, and thank you for that question. I think a lot of people are curious about what is this movie Anora that won the Best Picture?
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say it was a modest film, an art house film. Well, it will begin streaming next week on Hulu on March 17th. So a lot more people are probably going to see Anora than they ever did in the theater. This was the Best Picture winner, of course. Conclave is on Peacock, Emilia Perez on Netflix. Flow is on HBO Max. The big announcement, Wicked. Wicked will hit Peacock March 21st, so a week from tomorrow. So parents, strap in. Wicked is about to hit your living rooms. That's a biggie. The Brutalist, we know it's going to be on HBO Max. They have not announced a date. It will likely be April. But I think the big news there, Gemma, is that Wicked will be streaming on Peacock beginning, end of next week.
Well, you know, it's funny about that. You said parents strap in. It's more fun. In my house, it's like kids strap in because mama didn't get to see this in the theater because nobody would go see it with her. So now you can all sit over spring break and you can watch it with me. And be happy or not. And again and again. I am okay with that. Welcome to spring break, kids.
But let's talk about the ceremony. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about the ceremony. And there's one part. So Conan O'Brien's the host. Yeah. And he gives Adam Sandler a bit of a hard time.
Indeed. And we're going to hear Conan in just a few seconds talk about that. Well, he says it was Adam Sandler's idea, but let's relive this moment, which we think is got to be the most spontaneous and maybe the funniest moment of this year's Oscar. Let's take a listen.
And finally, for such a prestigious night, it's important that everyone is properly dressed, okay? You're dressed well. Adam.
Conan, what's up, my brother? What's going on, man?
Adam, what are you wearing?
What are you doing right now?
I'm asking you what you're wearing.
Nobody even thought about what I was wearing till you brought it up!
You're dressed like a guy playing video poker at 2 a.m., Adam.
And you know what, Conan? I like the way I look, because I'm a good person. I don't care about what I wear or what I don't wear. Did my snazzy gym shorts and fluffy sweatshirt offend you so much that you had to mock me in front of my peers?
Hey, I'm sorry. Adam, I apologize.
I'm going. I'm gonna go off. I go. Yeah, I'm leaving. I have to. It's not you. No, it's not you. It's him.
Adam and I are old friends, and I called him up, and he said, I have another idea, and it involved him dressing in the way that he's most comfortable, which of course was his idea because he doesn't want to put on a tux. And then his idea was so great, and then that was all Adam.
One more thing. Chalamet!
Gotta love the Timothy Chalamet shout out there at the end. And by the
Oh my
way,
gosh.
we need to note that the morning after the Oscars, there were reports that the ratings weren't that good. Well, it turns out the ratings were spectacular. The Oscar audience hit a 5-year high once they folded in
Wow.
all of social media. And the ratings, particularly among young adults, were really good. In fact, more young adults watched the Oscars this year than watched the Grammys. And that hasn't happened in quite some time. So Conan O'Brien,
yeah.
big success. Will he host it again? I no doubt they'll ask him. I think he was a pretty successful host.
I have to tell you, one of my favorite bits during the Oscars was seeing Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan on
yeah.
stage together. Because
Great.
I remember, right? And I remember growing up, Billy Crystal hosting the Oscars and how phenomenal he was. So it's great to see someone like Conan hosting it and doing such a great job. And then seeing that bit with Adam Sandler. It's just,
Yep.
I think that, if you don't have that, like that energy, it's difficult to get the ratings.
It was a long ceremony and it didn't feel like that. And there were a lot of
Right.
surprises. I was kind of concerned that they weren't going to have any musical performances, at least of the nominees, but they threw in some others. The show turned out to be actually rather entertaining. So kudos to the Oscars.
No, I agree. Okay, George. I mentioned this live action remake of Snow White.
Yeah.
And it is finally coming to theaters. But there's been a lot of controversy around this. So can you get us up to date on that? Because there's a latest controversy around it too.
Yeah, and Disney seems to be just pulling back a bit on how they are promoting and actually premiering Snow White. As a matter of fact, last night, the film's European premiere took place at a remote castle in Spain. Most media outlets were not invited to that event. The Los Angeles premiere is coming up this weekend. Reportedly will be smaller. And again, news journalists are not invited on the red carpet. And therefore, they're not going to have the opportunity to interview the film's cast. Why? Okay, so here is the controversy, or at least what social media says the controversy is. Peter Dinklage, we know, the Game of Thrones star, came out a couple of years ago. Of course, he's an actor with dwarfism, but he described the decision to retell the story of 7 dwarfs living in a cage as backward. And that kind of really got some traction. But then the lead of Snow White, Rachel Zegler, has not been shy about her criticism of Donald Trump and also some of her pro-Palestinian comments on social media. Gal Gadot, of course, is a native of Israel. As a matter of fact, we have to remember that she actually served a couple of years in the Israel Armed Forces. And so she's been quite active in her support of Israel. So there's a lot of, and here comes that word again, wokeism. But folks, it's Snow White. It's Snow White. I mean,
Yes.
7 and 8-year-olds are going to go to this movie. Who cares about some of this stuff? We'll see the movie. Let's hope it lands on its own terms. But my sense is social media has shackled this movie right down to the ground. It opens a week from Friday. We'll see how it does at the box office. It's a shame that all of these shadows are being cast on it.
So with that said, George, how do you think that's going to impact the opening of it and people going and seeing it? Because, I mean, these are big issues that I think a lot of people are making decisions on whether they would support a movie like this, right? No matter where they land on this issue.
Agreed. It's just a matter of where are we? I guess the big divide here is the fact that this is a G-rated movie, that this is a movie for kids, for families. Indeed, there's a place for all of these serious conversations. Well, let's take a listen. Let's have a little preview of Snow White.
You'll be safe from the Queen here.
Say all you have to do to make your wish come true.
You have to run.
Is let it go.
I'm not afraid to fight.
Well, I'm here.
Can you point me in the right direction?
Waiting on a wish, holding out for someday, hoping somehow
our kingdom. Follow me.
You're called happy because you're happy, and I'm called grumpy because I'm misunderstood.
It just sounds sweet. I think the music sounds lovely. Again, I just hope the movie lands on its own terms. But this is the world we live in, where comments on social media can take down a $200, $300, $400 million movie.
Wow. I mean, but you're right, George. Those are the times that we live in. And so it'll be, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this movie fares based on all of that controversy. Okay, George, let's talk previews, because you've got a preview of what you call a really wonderful under the radar movie. It opens in theaters at the end of the month. So tell us about this.
It is called The Penguin Lessons. I adore this movie. Now, I must admit, I have a ridiculously soft spot in my movie-going heart when an animal is up on the big screen. Movies like Old Yeller and Babe and Fly Away Home, the Paddington trilogy even. Well, here comes a movie called The Penguin Lessons. Again, it's an under-the-radar movie. It will open at the Flick, so it's an art house movie. It is a true story. And when you hear about it, you're going to think, oh, somebody made this up. It is a true story. It is the story of a professor. His name was Tom Michel, rather disillusioned when he agreed to teach English to some overprivileged kids at an uppity boarding school. But this was not in his native England. Instead, he took a job in Argentina. And one night, when he was walking along a beach in Uruguay, he was there on some alcohol-soaked weekend retreat, he came across a significant oil slick, which had, and the true story, it had claimed the lives of hundreds of penguins washed ashore by the tide. But there was one penguin barely alive, and somehow Michel dug deep into his conscience to do the right thing. He put the penguin under his coat, brought it back to his hotel room, scrubbed the oil off of the bird, but then he couldn't get rid of the penguin. The penguin followed him everywhere. Let's take a listen as some strangers kept coming up to him saying, "Oh, this is your penguin."
Sorry, is he your pet?
Okay, I've known him for less than a day. I rescued him from an oil slick.
You rescued him from an oil slick?
Yeah, and now he thinks he's my friend, but he's not my friend.
Well, you can't leave your penguin here.
He's not my penguin. I don't like penguins.
Then why did you save his life?
Indeed, that's the question.
Good question.
Right? And so it sounds lovely, right? So, but to be sure, this is a dramedy. So we got the comedy piece of this, right? Here's the drama. The fact is, this story, again, true story, it takes place in the mid-1970s in Argentina when, we'll remember our history, when innocent people were indiscriminately being snatched from Buenos Aires streets. And here is a scene where Tom Michel confronts a crime boss after he spots an innocent young girl who's been snatched away. Again, Tom Michel is trying to get a spine, if you will, and he approaches this crime boss. True story. Let's listen.
Of course you know her. You and your men kidnapped her and bundled her into the back of a car in broad daylight, didn't you?
Why would you speak to me of this girl?
The truth is, and this is the truth, I lost my daughter to drunk driver. It was a pointless death. It ruined my life and her mother's, and Sophia reminded me of her.
You should walk away from me right now.
It's a waste of a life.
It's really serious, and again, it reminds us of what was going on in South America at that time. In the meantime, here's Michel, and he smuggles the penguin back into his living quarters at the boarding school, and ultimately into his classroom. And suffice to say, his disillusion fades away. But that at some point, he has to face up with the headmaster. Let's listen.
And what happened to you?
I met a penguin.
Are you having some sort of breakdown?
I don't think so.
Well, it's insanity. Either you go or the penguin goes.
You mean if I go, the penguin can stay?
I said either you or the... Look, you and the penguin both need to go.
Well, they didn't go. The penguin stayed. The boys all of a sudden paid attention in class. And by the way, this is the amazing Steve Coogan as Tom Michelle. And you also heard the voice of Jonathan Pryce, who plays the headmaster. And we'll remember Steve Coogan from that wonderful movie, Philomena. And indeed, the Penguin Lessons, the screenwriter is the same man who wrote Philomena. So I adore this movie. And if you stick around at the end credits, there are actual home movies of the real penguin in the mid-1970s at the boarding school with the boys. It's quite a story. It's a movie you'll have to see and then tell others about it. It opens later this month at the Flicks. Folks, remember this. It is called The Penguin Lessons.
And George, this is an actual true story, as you said.
It is. He wrote this in a memoir, and the actor Steve Coogan thought, oh, this might make an interesting movie. I had never heard of this. It sounds like a little bit of a Disney movie until it gets very serious, but that's what makes this movie so compelling. It's really something to see.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I have to say, I think my boys might pay more attention in class if there was a penguin.
A penguin, yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, or they'd be distracted by the penguin, but it would be an experience no matter what. So
I agree.
Okay. All right. So we have to say goodbye, George, to a critically acclaimed comedy. It is about to air its final season. So tell us what's going away.
I think one of the, if not the most successful reboot on television, on commercial television, has been The Conners. And so if you think about this, going back to, well, when it was Roseanne and now The Conners, we're talking about 3 decades that the Conners family has been on ABC television. I think why it's so successful as The Conners is somehow it found its blue-collar roots again. Its working class struggles, if you will. And so it's going to come back for 6 final episodes. Its final season will begin March 26th, 6 episodes where the Conners say goodbye. And I was trying to find a moment to kind of represent the Conners. And this was from the final episode from last season. Here is Dan and Jackie. And of course, they're always trying to make ends meet. And the only job they could find was repossessing people's cars. And of course, you know, that's totally against who they are. And so here they are trying to repo a woman's car who is begging them not to do it. Let's listen.
Please, please, please don't take my car. I need it to drive to work and get my daughter to preschool.
Oh, you got a kid? Who you fooling? I found your dope spoon and your sweet cereal munchies and your diaper and your pacifier. Oh, she's got a kid.
Look, can't you cut me a break just this one time? I promise I will make sure that they get a payment.
We're not going to take your car, but they'll probably send somebody else over to get it. The best thing you can do is park a couple of blocks away.
And another thing I've seen people do is you get like a 6-foot python, you put that in the car. But whatever you do, and this is important, you remember you take it out before you put the kid in. Because there's nothing worse than finding a python with a kid-shaped lump in your backseat.
Oh my gosh, I love this. The Conners have grappled with parenthood and marriage, lots of financial pressures and aging, all in working class America, and they say goodbye to ABC. Their final 6 episodes begin Wednesday, March 26th.
So, George, here's what I think is super interesting about this reboot with the Conners.
Yeah.
If you remember when it was rebooted, Roseanne Barr was a part of it, right? I mean, the original was called Roseanne. And then she got into this huge controversy and she got fired. And who knew that, you know, without kind of that main character, that this show would go on and really be as critically acclaimed as it has been?
It was always an audience favorite. I think Roseanne was a groundbreaker, but let's face it, it was also brash because of the lead character.
Yes.
And The Conners is more about, well, who they are, and that is working class struggles. And so, and let's face it, the actors are pretty darn good, and they land the jokes, and that's a really, really specific path to walk, right? Working class struggles and make it funny. So kudos to them. But think of it, 30 years on commercial television.
That's amazing. Well, I remember a scene with Darlene, the middle daughter, as an adult, and she couldn't pay for her son to go to college. Right? This is something we hear all of the time. And remember, she takes the job at the college, but then her son finds out, and because I think she's in the lunchroom or something like that.
She's a lunch lady.
Yeah, right. It's funny, but it's heart-wrenching as well. But you understand why so many people can relate to this.
And indeed, these are the loops that are going to have to be tied up in the final 6 episodes. Will her son actually be able to go from community college to, a better college? How will they afford it? Who will pay for what? It's these people are barely making rent. So there's a number of things to be tied up here, but I think more than a few Americans can relate to it too.
Absolutely. Well, as always, George, it is such a pleasure to be talking with you. We are more than thrilled to not just have you back on the air with us, but to have you back in our Idaho Matters family. And of course, you will soon be back on Morning Edition as well. So I know a lot of people have been anxiously awaiting your return.
Gemma, thank you so very much for inviting me back. I can't wait to spend this countless hours with you talking about the things that we love and some of the things where we go, but it's all in the family, right?
Yes, it is. It really is. It is just such a pleasure, George. We've been speaking with our resident movie critic, George Prentice, who spends his spare time hosting Morning Edition, talking about what to watch this coming weekend and next week. I'm Gemma Gaudette, and this is Idaho Matters.